Great to be here for Six Tackles with Gus for another week. Week 2 of the finals coming up, and week 1 was outstanding rugby league. We'll talk about all of that. The latest on Josh Addo-Carr. Unfortunately, it keeps keeping on that story. Nicho Hynes has actually hit back at his critics today. He spoke to the media at Sharks training. Wayne Bennett's fired up at Souths. Plenty of Ask Gus questions. The Tab greatest era debate as well. Welcome, Gus.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's not often in our line of work here in the media that we get positive feedback, but you received a glowing reference from one of our listeners this week. Would you like to go through it?
Did I?
You did. You did. It's on the rundown. In fact, you brought it to our attention. Tell us the great work you've done for one of our listeners.
Well, Anthony Deeb, who's a fanatical Bulldogs supporter, sent me a note saying, thank you. Listen to your podcast with Matt Thompson every week and always took note of your tips. After 27 rounds, I won 4 tipping comps, some great prize money. Also took out the VB Victoria Better Major Prize, which includes flights, 2 grand final tickets, hotel accommodation and spending money, on top of the Canterbury League's Bankstown Sports and the AskGus Club tipping comps, $500 each. Love you, mate. What he didn't say was he did the opposite of what I said. No,
I cottoned
nice
on too late. I wish I listened to you. I'm running last, I think.
Very nice, Anthony. Good on you.
Well done. Good to see you Bulldogs sticking together. I hope he wins a couple of VB slabs in there as well. Congratulations on your team's performance on Sunday. I know it seems like a hollow thing to say, but that was a sensational final. They played their absolute backsides, and they didn't deserve to lose.
No, they didn't. But that's football sometimes, and it's football at the highest level. Manly dug really deep to get that. We'll probably talk about it later. And it was a great game of football in a wonderful Sunday afternoon of rugby league, record crowd. And as I said on 100% Footy last night, when I've been, over the last few years, recruiting coaches and staff and players to come to our club, one of the things that I say, and this goes from my time back at the club in the 80s, and we always regarded ourselves as the biggest and the best, the Bulldogs. We had great rivals in, Parramatta's and Manly's and Dragons and those teams, but we always felt as though we were the biggest and the best. That was the attitude we had. And I've said to them all coming, I said, this is the biggest club in Sydney. This is potentially the biggest club in Sydney. If we can just, turn this big ship around and get some success for this team, it's got a fanatical supporter base, and I think that they'll come out to support us. And we got great evidence of that over the second half of the competition. Not only the crowd at the finals, but I think we got 45,000 to a Parramatta game. We got over 30,000 to Warriors and Cowboys, who are out-of-town teams. We were really well supported right throughout that period. And the 50,000 on the weekend, the theatre and the standard of football and the way our blokes played, I couldn't be more proud, to be honest. We gave away a lot of experience to a lot of teams this year. It was a young side. The other factor is time spent playing together. It's one of the real factors in talking about professional sport, in any sport, about time spent training and playing together. And, we probably had less time playing and training together than any team in the competition. And it wasn't until the back half of the year that any form of combination started to build. And the other part is that most of our players are nowhere near their peak yet. So it all goes well for the future. But I would like to think that down the track, if we can awaken this giant and we can make our performances consistent, which is the plan over the next 3 or 4 years, then crowds like that should be the norm for home games. I'm sure our supporter base would come out and support us on a weekly basis at home with crowds like that, particularly against the Sydney teams. And that's the sort of rivalry you want to build. And, Manly were outstanding, and, we wish them all the luck for the rest of the final series. Just a great game. And
it didn't feel unlike a grand final. The atmosphere and the intensity.
Yeah, and I think for the teams that finish at the lower end of the top 8, it's very, very difficult to win 4 times in a row to get through to the grand final. No one's done it in the NRL era. But if you get to the finals, you kind of want to win one, at least, and that's why it was so hard fought. And those teams that both walked a tightrope to get to the finals, I was pleased that we were able to put probably one of our better performances of the year on our biggest day. And if that's the way we bow out, getting beaten 2 points, by Manly at that stage, then it's a good way to finish and a good way to start next year's preparation. It wasn't like we got flogged in our last game and, we've sort of limped out of it. We probably peaked, to be honest, probably over a month ago. I thought we peaked and we struggled with our last 2 games. We had a few players missing, but we struggled the last 2 games. But it was more to make a good finals presence. Once we knew we were in the finals, we wanted to get there and compete hard, and we did. We played a quality side. Cherry Evans and Trebojevic and these fellas, they're all class players, and I think our blokes will have learnt a lot of lessons out of that game to carry forward. It was very, very pleasing for the whole club and our fan base, and the fans were so great.
I put to you, Phil Gould, that Kalyn Ponga is the best fullback in rugby league.
Well, let me preface that. He's the greatest, right at the moment, he's the most potent attacking force in the game. What he's done over the last few weeks has been extraordinary. We saw this for a 10-week period last year, but some of his football at the back end of this year has been extraordinary. If they can keep him on the field and keep him that, then they're going to have a finals presence for many years to come. He's an exceptional player. You know, mind you, we've got a wealth of talent in the fullback position across the game, but sometimes there's just an X factor that you can't ignore, and he is truly an X factor. He does things the others just can't. Is he the best fullback in the game? Well, I'd take anyone, a number of half a dozen, including our own Connor Tracy, who worked so hard in that game the other day. I'm very happy with our fullback. It's a position that's strengthened over the years across all the clubs. Everyone's well represented in that position.
A lot of different styles too.
They all are different styles, but there's only one Kalyn Ponga. There's only one style like that. That a couple of his sidestep combinations the other night defied belief, like absolutely defied belief. I don't know how he doesn't. If I did that, I'd dislocate a hip bone.
Don't think that.
Honestly,
I wouldn't recommend you try.
No, honestly, I've never seen anything like that. I remember when Brad Fittler first started come on the scene. He had this funky step, and kids were trying to copy it and couldn't do it. And then Benji Marshall came in, and every kid in the park was trying the Benji Marshall. He used to leap in the air, and he'd look like he was going right, and he'd go left, or he could nearly, Kalyn Ponga, there was a move he put on the other night. Honestly, I fell off the lounge watching it.
It looks like a yoga pose.
He's fooled me. It was just ridiculous. And to think that he's now just coming into the prime of his career. He's 26 years of age, and he's got the best 10 years in front of him, and I hope he stays injury-free and can entertain us for a long period of time.
Newcastle do rely too much on him, though, don't they?
Well, when you've got to get a player getting paid like that, that's what the big bucks are for, mate.
Sure, but I mean, it's kind of him or no one.
Well, yeah, that's a little unfair, but there's been a time this year I've been critical they haven't got him the ball enough.
That's true, yeah.
But he's your weapon.
Yeah.
And when it gets down to the big games, if you've only got one player that's threatening, the good teams will accommodate that. But during the course of the year, he's going to win you a lot of games to play finals football. And that's what you need. You need to be winning consistently. So if he plays well every week and they sort the rest of the side out, and it's but he's commanding the big bucks. It's his job to win games. It's his job to influence the scoreboard, and he does it very, very well. Good goal kicker. His goal kicking is getting better. But, gee whiz, some of the footwork is just extraordinary, and he makes people miss. He breaks through the line so simply. Other players just can't do what he does.
So the teams have just been named. We're recording this a day early on Tuesday. I'm going to change this next question. Joey Manu's been picked in the centres. That's the right move for the Roosters.
Yes, I think so. I'm not for weakening a strength to strengthen a weakness. I'm really not. I see that they've gone with Sand and Smith in the halves again, and I think that's the right way. I think I described it on 100% footy as, you dance with the girl you brung to the dance, and you got to stick with it. And I think Sand and Smith was very, very competent the other night. He's only going to get it better for the experience. Joey Manu is a weapon. They've got to find better ways to get Joey into the game and get him the ball earlier and one-on-one. And, Joey is someone who can win this game for them on the weekend. He is one of the X-factor players in that side, and they've got to find a way to bring him into the game. He's a world-class centre, and that's his position. I guess at times we try to complicate things. He does go very, very well at fullback, but right at the moment, they need to bring Sand and Smith on. They need to get the best out of Luke Keary, and they need to find a way to get the ball to Joey Manu.
Nathan Cleary will finish his career as Rugby League's best player.
Well, plenty of people will have that opinion. And look, the scary part is the best is in front of him. We haven't seen the best of him yet. He's still only 26 years of age.
Is he only 26?
Yeah. Nathan Cleary... and I think I've spoken about this before. We've tracked the data because we're all looking for the next big playmakers and all that.
Yeah.
We've tracked the data on all these top players. Your Cherry Evanses and your Ben Hunts and your Sean Johnsons and all that sort of thing. And the halfbacks that probably didn't reach that status and all that sort of thing. And they've all got a similar trait particularly the ones that came on as teenagers or just after their teenage years, and the data, their influence on the scoreboard and their influence on, line breaks and line break assists and all that sort of thing, and the point scoring part of the game, and other game management, sort of measures that we have. And they all have a similar sort of trait. They all sort of come out of their teenage years, early 20s, and they improve really quickly. And then they have this sort of dip as all the other coaches and teams start to game plan for them and accommodate them. And, they start to deal with money and fame and, media and success and getting targeted by opposition teams. And then the really good ones, they sort of slide for a while, and some slide out and never come back. And the good ones sort of regroup again, and then they get to around about 24, 25, and their data starts to take off again and gets to extraordinary levels. And we've got all our great playmakers sort of over 30 years of age at the moment. Nathan Cleary's trajectory has taken a similar path in that his graph looks exactly the same. There is this, he came into first grade at 18. At 18, 19 and 20 years of age, he led the youngest Panthers side in the competition to 3 consecutive semi-final series and won a final every year. It was extraordinary for one so young, and whose game at that time was very, very simple. So he had this rise like everybody else, and he had this little bit of a dip there for 12 or 18 months, and then what we've seen the last few years. The difference between his graph and everybody else's graph, he's just miles above them. Even in the early stages, his dip never came down as far, and now he's going, and his trajectory is that he will outperform any playmaker in history over the next decade, which you'd assume he's going to play for another decade.
Where do I find these graphs?
Oh, I can produce them for you.
Okay.
And the point scoring is going to be the thing. I've said that he will score more than 3,000 points. 3,000 might be conservative now. I mean, he's going to break all point scoring records. He's going to break all, and it's why I said a few years ago when they were asking whether or not Panthers could go back to back and win 2 premierships in a row, I said they're going to win 5 or 6, not 2. They're going to win 5 or 6. Now, salary cap's going to eat into that eventually, and they're losing a lot of talent, and they've got some great kids coming through. But while ever they keep that nucleus, that combination, of Asaya Yeo and Cleary and Dylan Edwards, and it's a great start for them. And then you've got Liam Martin and you've got Leota. I know Fisher Harris is going, and I know they've lost some other players, but Luai's going. So it's going to make it hard. But Nathan Cleary will oversee the next generation of Panthers that are coming through. Win, lose or draw this competition this year, they're still the team to beat, and Cleary's the reason why. You saw that the other night. They were sort of going along okay, and people saying, well, can they lift? Well, he put that to bed in the first 20 minutes.
Well, yes. That's my next question to you. So Penrith 30, Roosters 10, just having a quick look back at week 1 of the finals. How does a team compete against a Penrith side that plays and starts with that level of intensity and that clinical football? It seems like they just overwhelm opposition.
Well, they just deny you an opportunity to play your game, is what they do. That's the whole premise of what they do. It's all about controlling your possession, where you get it and what you can do with it, and how quickly you're going to have to do it because their defence is just going to swarm all over you. They're extremely fit. There was one poignant point in the game that really typified that the other night.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, where who made the
charge down?
The charge down. Not only did they catch him when he had a head start, but they were back on the line, ready to defend before the opposition had a dummy half.
Never seen anything like it.
And defended that set of 6 as though their life depended upon it. That is the difference between the Panthers and everybody else. Melbourne Storm have got that. That's what they have done with the system and keeping that group of players together. It's a big thing about, I just spoke about it with the Bulldogs, time spent playing and training together. All those players that have been in that system for all this period of time and learnt their trade. And it's not an overly big side. They're not big in physical stature, the Panthers. They're not a big side in most of their positions, but they're extremely fit and they play at an intensity and a brand at their best that teams just can't maintain. And what they're prepared to do, which some teams aren't, they're prepared to play boring for as long as it takes. They're prepared to get into the grind with you and virtually drag you into the quicksand until you can't breathe. And they don't care. They'll just take you to a depth where you can't swim.
But the first part of that is you have to overcome that initial, not ambush, but, it's an avalanche, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they play the speed they play at.
Yep.
But they haven't played at that pace all year. They put Nathan back in, and it's just like they're on all cylinders.
When Nathan comes back, everything is under control.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about tackle counts. They don't have to worry about kicking game. They don't have to worry about direction. They don't have to worry about where the ball comes from or when it's delivered. They don't have to worry about who's in charge. They don't have to worry about who makes decisions. Nathan comes back and everyone else can just be themselves, play in their own corridor and do their stuff. Run hard, tackle hard, chase kicks, work hard and work for each other. And they don't have to worry about anything else. Nathan's the one that worries about the clock and the scoreboard and the decision-making and making sure they get the ball in certain positions. I spoke about it at length last night when we were talking about Nicho Hynes and some of the things that Nicho Hynes under pressure with his football. And Nathan has got this ability to give everyone in the Panthers the opportunity to be the best that they can be without having to worry about what the team is doing and where it's going. And he did that the other night. His control was exemplary. Now, it was nearly football perfection. I think I nearly tweeted this is football perfection. Like, it doesn't get any better than this.
No.
There were some fortunate bounces and there were some fortunate things, but if you're constantly putting pressure on and going to the game, those balls bounce for you. Those things come for you. You do force errors. You do force mistakes. You do score tries off kicks because they compete on absolutely everything they do. Melbourne Storm the other day, I think I said in the commentary there, every 50-50 chance, every time there's a 50-50 chance for possession to go somewhere or one side to take an advantage, Panthers and Melbourne win that 50% more often than not. And eventually that comes back to be the difference in the scoreline.
Because they got more players there.
Yeah, and Panthers play with that confidence. They play with a real speed of line and a real speed, and they're happy to be boring. They're happy. It doesn't look boring to us. It looks perfection, but they're happy to be boring in their football, and then they can rise to another level when they feel as though, you get into this cycle, we work it up for 5 and kick, you work it up for 5 and kick, we work it up for 5. It's like a game of forcings back, and it virtually comes down to who makes a mistake first, who drops a ball, who misses a tackle, who gives away a penalty. And invariably Penrith they can go through that for 8 or 10 minutes, and then you give away a penalty and they think that's a victory. Now they're going to say, now, defend this, right? Now, tackle this. And they come at you with a whole different brand. Their football is brilliant, and they were. It's one of the things the Roosters don't like playing against. That's why they've beaten the Roosters 10 in a row. Roosters haven't learned to maintain that intensity and to play boring football and grind out like that.
An amazing stat. It's now, so the last 21 games against Penrith and Melbourne, the Roosters have won 1.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's not the brand of football they want. They don't want that brand of football. They don't want to have to go through that. And there aren't any other sides in the competition that can do that to them. So Roosters, for all their brilliance in attack and all the points scoring, they scored more points than any team in the competition this year, do not like feeling uncomfortable. And even in a lot of those games, there were periods where they were made to feel uncomfortable and their defence gave way. They won a lot of games by 30-20 or 40-30 and those sort of scorelines. They got upset in a few games they should have won. Well, that rarely happens with Melbourne and Penrith. They just grind you into the ground. And where the Roosters are struggling to beat that side is that Roosters come to play and they have their game plan and they've got their attack and they've got all these things they like to do. Rarely do they get a chance to do it. Rarely do they get a chance to play their brand of football. They got some possession early in the second half the other night and they found out that Penrith, you can score against Penrith. This particular brand of Penrith side, you can. Your problem is getting into that position often enough. You've either got to risk trying to beat them from your own end of the field, which is fraught with danger because Penrith will force you in errors. If you're going to wait until you get up into their end of the field to do your attacking football, you could be waiting for ages. And when you get there, you might get one shot. And if you don't score then, Penrith get the ball back and they work it downfield and the whole cycle starts again, which means when you get there, you're under pressure to score straight away, which can cause errors. And that's how they beat side. They beat sides mentally.
Yes. I've been looking forward to asking you this. If you're preparing a team to play Penrith with that first 25 minutes in mind, what's your message to them?
Penrith will respect you. Penrith will respect you if you are prepared to get into that battle with them, which means Penrith won't actually try to score points on you. If you're prepared to put your head down, 5 tackle kick, 5 tackle kick, 5 tackle kick, control the ball, kick, chase, tackle, Penrith will respect that, and that's all they'll do. That's all they will do. Penrith won't try and beat you from their own end of the field. Right? Penrith won't be dragged out of that to suit you or be forced into error, right? Which is why I said the other night, you've got to get Penrith behind on the scoreboard and hope that someone in that side cracks, but rarely they do. They chase you with their defence, all right? They've shown the ability to score late if they have to, if they're behind in those positions. But if you can start the game and get your share of possession, getting your share of possession is critical. Not giving away penalties, not giving away turnovers, not missing tackles. If you can get into a grind with Penrith, they will respect that, right? And they will go with you in that vein. They won't try to beat you on the scoreboard at that part of the game. Mm-hmm. What they'll trust is you can't do it for as long as them. They'll take you into deep water and you'll drown, and then eventually they'll get the break that they need, and then it's 6, then it's 12, and then away they go. So you need, and I think most teams can. They just don't like doing it, and they're not prepared to do it for long enough. They'll do it for a few sets and think we're going well, and then someone will drop a ball, someone will get bundled into touch, someone will, the kick won't go to the right bloke. They'll give away a penalty, and then all of a sudden they're 6 behind. Well, we can't keep grinding here. If Penrith gets 6 behind at any time or 12 behind, you never see Penrith panic and try to win from their own end of the field. They'll chase you with their defence. They'll chase you with the grind. They'll just chase you with that they have to be next to score. And it's a mentality built up over a long period of time, and in the training and in the way they prepare their teams and prepare their players. And it's a filtering system right throughout their junior rep program and their academy program that they're the sorts of players with that sort of mentality that make it. When was the last Panthers junior come through there that didn't look like they could handle that sort of football? They all can, because they do it right through the grades. And they do it right through their training. It's a mental approach to the game. And that's what an academy program should look like. And the Melbourne Storm, because of all their success over all those years, and the Roosters themselves have had a DNA. The Roosters have been successful for a long, long time. They've been able to develop through. But right at the moment, they're just not prepared to get into the grind with Melbourne and Penrith. And that's really what stands them out, those two sides. And albeit, too, they've got two of the game's best halfbacks and game managers, and that's important. The game management is so important. And once you've got a Cleary or you've got a Jerome Hughes or you've got a Daly Cherry Evans or you've got these sort of players, and the rest of the players can just worry about playing the game and not managing the game, it makes a big difference. Penrith are beatable. They're not unbeatable. Melbourne are beatable. They're not unbeatable. But are there any sides in this competition left that are prepared to do what they need to do and to absorb the punishment they're going to get? That's arguable. You saw the difference on the weekend. 37-10, 30 points to 10. They just brush aside the other top 4 sides, and they'll do it again in the preliminary finals.
So it'll be Cronulla or North Queensland playing Penrith. Nicho Hynes actually gutsy enough to front the media today down at Cronulla training. Look, it's like booing Santa, really, with Nicho, but the reality is in big games he hasn't aimed up, and that was the same thing down in Melbourne. It's prompted a few people to question whether he should play halfback this week. The decision's been made. He is going to maintain the number 7. Greg Alexander was one. I think a few of our lads might have been questioning whether they should stick with him, given that the record Daniel Atkinson has this year. I think he's lost twice as a starting half for the Sharks. But he stays on the bench, so it's Hynes and Trindle again. He's got to find something. He's got to find at this level.
He's maybe got to find less. I don't know whether you listened last night, 100% for him. We're talking about the development of playmakers, the development of halfbacks, and the role of the halfback within the team. And the most vital elements of the halfback role is not the flamboyant game-playing, passing, type stuff, setting up tries. And I talked about the Shane Warne effect, and for those that didn't hear it, I'll sort of repeat it again. It's a conversation I've had with young halfbacks and even older halfbacks right through the time, and it would be a conversation I'd have with Nicho, where he is at the moment with his career and his football. And I'm sure Craig Fitzgibbon is doing the same. I'm not telling anyone how to suck eggs, but the Shane Warne effect for me, and Shane Warne was our greatest ever spin bowler and the greatest ever bowler in cricket history. And Shane Warne had any number of variety of deliveries. He had, googlies, and he had flippers, and he had wrong-uns, and he had flat trajectory, and he had loopy punts. He could bowl any number of different types of deliveries when the going was good and the pitch would accommodate that. But there were times when Shane Warne, the pitch was giving him nothing, or the batsmen had dug in and were just a little bit too good for them on the day. And sometimes, the conditions don't suit you. Shane Warne had the ability, for all the variety in his game, to bowl ball after ball, over after over, day after day, the same stock standard leg break delivery that pinned the batsman down and gave his team a chance to wear down the opposition to freeze up the run rate and do whatever. And it's what I call the ability to have something you can fall back on under pressure that you trust, that doesn't need anything in your favour. When you're not getting what you want, when you don't see what you want to see, to understand that it's just okay to do simple stuff over and over and over again. And it's the first thing I try to teach playmakers, is to have that grinding mentality and that simple, be happy to be boring and to be happy to be controlled, and do what's necessary for your team to keep them in the game and keep them in the contest. Unfortunately, in the development of young players and in the way we promote the game and the way the game is commentated, and I'm guilty of that too, what the kids see on TV and what they hear, and glorifying the Andrew Johnses and the Jonathan Thurstons and the Cooper Cronks and the Kalyn Pongers and all these great players and the Benji Marshalls and all that, and what the kids see is what? They see the flashy footwork, they see the steps, they see the banana kicks, they see the chip kicks, the grubber kicks, they see the flat ball, the long pass, the low pass, the back pass, the no-look pass. And somehow that gets glorified in that's what makes me a playmaker. It's not. It's not what makes you a halfback, all right? That's talent. That's talent, and that can be developed over a period of time. And most of our halfbacks have the talent to affect those things. But your primary role for the team, now when I say, bowl ball after ball, over after over, so if we're talking set of six after set of six, minute after minute, control, and who do you think of straight away? Nathan Cleary. And that's what he provides. And that's the strong part of Nathan Cleary's name. Nathan Cleary is not a flamboyant footballer. He's just not, right? He's manufactured playmaking abilities, and he's got talent, and he can make line breaks himself, but it all comes out of what? Controlling the game, controlling where the game is played, getting his team on the front foot, delivering the ball, so direction of the team, delivery of the ball to his other playmakers and his other players in the team, doing what's right at that right point in time, when to kick early, when to kick late, when to kick high, when to kick to a corner, when to pass, when to run the ball on tackle 5. All these decisions that a halfback should take that have got nothing to do with actually playmaking and creating tries. Mm-hmm. And over a period of time, in his early years, when he first came in as a teenager, we just said, give the team direction, concentrate on your defence, concentrate on your support play, and concentrate on learning all the aspects of your kicking game. Nothing about setting up tries, setting up line breaks, making breaks, stepping or doing anything. Nothing like that. No pressure on him to do any of that whatsoever. Yet that's what we glorify playmakers for, and it gives junior rep coaches and junior rep footballers the wrong impression about what's going to make an NRL playmaker in the long run, right? So Nicho Hynes needs to develop the Shane Warne mentality. When things aren't going good, what's my role? What does the team need most from me? And then his flamboyance and his talent and his abilities are a bonus. They're an add-on to it, right? I just feel like at times Nicho's trying to punch his way out of trouble rather than defend his way or give his team the direction that they need. And it's only a simple thought process. It's just, it comes down to expectation, listening to commentators, listening to social media. There are so many magazine shows, there are so many ex-players in the media these days. Everyone's being critiqued, everyone's an expert, and it's all good commentary and it's all good for the fans and it's all good that. It's not good for developing players.
No, it's not.
And they get the wrong impression. They see Supercoach and fantasy football and what makes a good player and all that. That's not the statistics that we look at. That's not what makes a good player.
Don't you look at Supercoach points?
It's the worst thing that ever happened to first-grade football coaches.
Supercoach?
I've known footballers to come in with their Supercoach points to negotiate contracts.
No, you haven't.
We say, no, I know one very high-profile one that used to do that. But,
Careful.
Tiger, that doesn't make a good footballer. These are the things that make good footballers, So, I'm sort of banging on a little bit there, but,
Simplify it, Nicho.
I feel sorry.
Simplify
I feel sorry for Nicho because Nicho he doesn't need to do something. He needs to do less. He needs to do less of this and more of the important stuff. And that's a really simple thing for him to do. That's really simple. It's not up to Nicho Hynes to win Cronulla games. It's not. It's up to Nicho Hynes to put Cronulla in a position to win games. It's up to Nicho Hynes to put Cronulla in a position where they don't lose games and shoot themselves in the foot. That should be Nicho Hynes' priority. That's all I want out of a young playmaker. You know, if we get something else, that's a bonus. I remember coaching a very young Greg Alexander who had all that flair and all that skill and all that speed, and he was brilliant. But Greg had to learn the game. Greg had to learn what being a halfback was all about, and we actually did that. I spent a half a season playing him fullback, if you remember, in 1990, and then moved into back to the halfback later in the season because he then understood the game from a more broad. It wasn't about what he could do to create points, although he was very brilliant at it, but he had to learn how to manage games and how to manage what the team needed and to bring everyone else to light. It's a part of developing playmakers. It's extremely important and I think overlooked a lot. I think kids get the wrong impression on what is going to make an NRL halfback and what's going to make a winning NRL halfback. And that's why it's so hard. That's why so many are written off so early in their career because they don't understand the basics of the importance.
Well, the Sharks, and we'll preview the games in detail, so we'll wrap this up, but they've looked their most dangerous this year when they haven't had two half playmakers. Brayley has taken on responsibility, they've had success.
Yep.
Most teams you think we've lost both our halves, like we're playing the hooker at halfback, and but they've actually looked better.
I'll guarantee you this. I'll guarantee you in today's game of rugby league, you can win the game out of dummy half. You can win the game out of dummy half if you play from dummy half. Right, run and pass. If you can do the dummy half work well, you can win a competition. Right, that's a simple way to do it. Right, but that's how simple it can be. The development of our halves and the critiquing of our halves, and and that I'm sure it eats into their confidence. I'm sure it eats into their heads. I'm sure it does. You've just got to really protect these kids and get them to a point where eventually their talent comes. You go and talk to the great playmakers today in our game today, and as I say, they're all over their 30s and that sort of thing, and ask them how they felt about their football in their teenage years and early 20s. All right? Ask them what the difference is between now and then. If they could go back and talk to themselves, 10 years prior, what would they tell themselves and what would they not listen to and what was bad advice and what was good advice, or how did they change their attitude towards their football or what their role was within the team? I think you'd get some really interesting answers. So we're all looking for the new whiz kid, the new young thing coming along. Well, the new young kid's got a long way to go.
What would you tell yourself 10 years ago?
Eh?
What would you tell yourself from 10 years ago?
I'd have a lot of lessons for myself 10 years ago.
I've got a few as well.
But I've told you 1,000 times, I wouldn't change a thing.
No.
I wouldn't, honestly, I wouldn't. All the mistakes and all the stupid things I'd ever did, I wouldn't change a thing because I wouldn't want to change my luck. I told you. If I get reincarnated, I'm coming back as myself.
I would too. I'd come back as you as well.
And I'd do it all over again. And I made a lot of mistakes. Made a lot of mistakes in life, in football, in all sorts of things. But
one man was perfect, Gus, and they put him on the cross.
Well.
Hey, what about this? Wayne Bennett, right? Turns up yesterday. Boys, no one fears you. You need a reality check. Your attitude's shit. You're unfit. Your work ethic's terrible. Mic drop. See you in December.
I think he also said, stop me when I say something wrong.
What about that?
Yeah, typical.
I read that thinking, he must have started early. No, I'm going on for a holiday now.
I'm going for a holiday.
And then he just walked out. Huh?
Yeah. Wayne's.
What about that?
Wayne's unique. He's been around a long, long time.
He's just said that the player's going to be mulling over that for the next 2 months.
99% of coaches, if they went to coach that club for the first time and went in and said that, they'd be off from day one. Wayne's one of the very, very few that could actually do that and have the impact that he wants. And let me tell you, when they turn up in November, long before Wayne gets there, right, let me tell you, they're going to be ready.
That'll be festering in their minds.
There'll be no working yourself fit during the off-season. They won't dare turn up and miss their time on the first run or miss their weight on the first lift or miss their first skin fold. I'll guarantee you, November 1, South Sydney will be primed for a big off-season, and Wayne will walk in on December 1. He'll ask his staff how they're going. Going good. All right, well, now I'll just weave my magic dust here and we'll start working on a little bit of football. But, didn't surprise me, and he's probably one of the only few that could do it and have the impact.
It's brilliant.
You can imagine if a new young rookie coach come in and said that, and they'd walk out and say,
He's gone.
Stuff this bloke.
He's gone.
How do we get a new one?
Imagine Jason Rolls walks into para. That's his first thing. Gus, we know Josh Addo-Carr is going to go to the integrity unit. There's been a second positive. He accepted the fine, and he's off the roads for 3 months. That's I don't know what that says. I just want to ask, do you feel you've been lied to?
I've said all along that Josh Addo-Carr came to us with a certain version of events, and that over time changed slightly from day to day, depending on what had been sort of revealed. At the end of the day, what we have is a positive drug test, that there were drugs in his system last Friday night. I believe he's still protesting his innocence in that. But it's somehow, somewhere, he's going to have to explain to himself and explain to people that matter exactly how that's happened and why it's happened, and then why we've gone through what we've gone through over the last week or so with that. It was certainly bad timing, and it was so proud of the club with the way they dealt with it, with the way the players and the coaches, put it out of their minds and got prepared for the weekend and performed the way they did. Now, there's a process here. Josh Addo-Carr, I believe on Thursday, has a meeting with the NRL Integrity Unit. The NRL Integrity Unit doesn't get involved on issues like this until it has gone through the courts. So what would normally happen is they would wait for the result of the second drug test. Now, it's come back positive. They would then wait to see whether or not the player wanted to contest that in court. Josh has made the decision he's not going to contest that finding in court, that he's going to accept the fine and the suspension of his licence, which is, that's how society deals with it. That's how the courts will. So far as the law is concerned, it's now over. It's a dead matter. The law has dealt with it.
Yes. They've
got him with a positive, driving with content of drug in his system. They've fined him. They've taken his licence off him. As far as they're concerned, it's over, right? But it's now what the game does and what it's done for the game. The NRL Integrity, now that he's taken the fine and accepted the penalty from the courts, and he's not going to court to contest it, even though privately he's protesting his innocence and saying he didn't take the drug, he's going to have to come up with some solution as to how it got into his system, because it's definitely in his system. It's end of the story. That's what's happened. And around the world, we've seen some bizarre explanations of how this might have happened or didn't happen. Josh has got to find out how it happened, as simple as that. But he goes to the NRL Integrity Unit on Monday. They'll make a determination then on what penalty they will deliver under whatever disrepute they think they've brought the game into. As I understand it, part of their interview with Josh will be to understand how he represented himself to the club and what he told the club, and whether or not they feel as though he's misrepresented any of the events of that night and in the ensuing days to the club. And once the NRL have made their determination, then it's up to the Bulldogs club to deal with it and what penalty or whatever they want to impose. As I said on 100% Footy last night, the future of Josh Addo-Carr, I will make a decision on what, or a recommendation to the board on how I see the future going forward. That will go to the board for discussion. They may agree or disagree with whatever I have to say or whatever my thoughts are. They may have a different thinking on what's happened. We're still investigating. We're still searching as to find out, what really happened. But at some point, there will be a discussion with his manager and with Josh going forward. It's as simple as that, and that's what we have to do. And until such times as we get to that point, there's really not much more I can say about it. I'll make a recommendation. That doesn't mean that the board will agree with my recommendation, and that doesn't mean that'll be the course of action going forward. But whatever we do, we'll do in the best interests, both short-term and long-term, of the club, the best club interests. Our policy is club first, team second, individual third. It was a difficult week for the club. It was a difficult week for Josh and his family, I know. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. We can live in the world the way we'd like it, or we can live in the world the way it is. The way it is that Josh has got a positive drugs test driving on Friday night, the day before the game, and we need to know why. Josh needs to know how that happened, if he doesn't really know how it happened, and then we have to act on it. Simple as that. And there's a whole lot at play there. There's a whole lot of play about the perception of our club, the image of our club, the standards that we want to set, the culture of our club, the young players coming through the system, and also, setting precedents for what may come in the future. there's a lot to consider, but that's what leadership is about. It's about doing the right thing for the club and our culture and that's what we'll do. But as I say, I'll make a recommendation to the board. I'll meet with his management, and then from there, I'll discuss with the board what our next steps are.
So you don't, just to summarise, you don't believe you've got the entire story?
There's too many contradictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Holly's question was, what do you do in the off-season as general manager? Holly, he goes on holidays. He gets a towel out, puts a bit of sunscreen on, gets the tab app up on his phone, and away he goes. 6 months, doesn't do anything. Please.
I wish.
David says, can or should the Dragons afford to lose Ben Hunt? Who's the best possible replacement?
Right. So we're going to buy a halfback. Where are they?
Well, I don't know, but I don't think they get one now.
There's some really good young talent coming through, but they're all in that age group that I spoke about, where they're still learning their trade and they're still coming through. And and it's sometimes unfair to expose them to the top grade if your side's not strong enough around them. Or, look, probably one of the best credentialed young halfbacks in the competition, which we've seen. He's played New South Wales under-19s a couple of years ago, is Troy Pezzett at the Melbourne Storm.
Jonah
Pezzett.
Yeah. Troy was his dad.
Troy's dad. But Storm are being extremely patient with him.
He got hurt.
They got Drain Hughes, and I know he's had an ACL, but they've been extremely patient with him. And he's been patient too. He knows that he's in the right system and he can be there for a couple of years and learn his trade. And I think as a game, we've got to spend more money and more time on these playmaker academies. Halfbacks are so important. Playmakers are so important. And your first grade career, is between 25 and 35. That's now the window for the professional playmaker. So we've got to keep these teenagers going and keep them in the system and keep them learning their trade and not exposing them too early. Everyone will come to you and say, you need a front rower, you need a halfback. Well, thanks, Scoop. But where do you get them? And what are you going to pay to get them? And if there's a shortage of them and there's 4 or 5 clubs want one, what do you do? It's only going to drive the price up, and then that hurts your salary cap going forward. Ben Hunt is one of the elite players in the game. Now, he's played with the Dragons and they've had an on and off relationship for a number of years. And, as it would appear from the media looking on, I don't know what happens in there and how these things leak out. But, there's been an assessment of this year's season and, he's got a year to go on his contract there. They're apparently not going to offer him an extension into 26 and beyond. I don't know what the future is for Ben Hunt and the Dragons. That's for them to work out. But if they were to lose him, and this is the other thing, we'll talk about a player, it's too much money or it's not the right character or it's not this, right? There are factors you've got to look at. Then I say, what's the price of not having them? If we don't pay this money and if we don't do this deal, what's the price of not having that player? What's our alternative? And in the halfback market at the moment, there aren't a lot of alternatives to game-managing, game-winning halfbacks. Mm. Remembering, too, that Ben Hunt's time at the Dragons, how many times have they made the top 8?
They've made the finals for 6 years, isn't it?
How long has he been there?
Well, longer than that.
Yeah, so, look at the world the way you like it, or look at the world the way it is. They're facts. You can't get away from those facts. Now, I think Ben Hunt is a great player. He's a terrific footballer, a terrific competitor. Look what he does at Origin when he goes and plays dummy half there and plays hooker. He's outstanding. And he's had some great... He's actually created more tries than any halfback in the game this year.
Yeah.
But it hasn't helped them get to the top 8. They had probably better than a season of what a lot of people expected. But going forward, what are their options if they don't have Ben Hunt? Tell me, what are they going to do?
Well, they've got young Lycan King Tongia, who had a couple of games.
Yeah, he's more of a 6 and he's a baby.
Kyle Flanagan. Marshke is a good player, but I think he's gone.
Yeah.
So you kind of, there's no one that's anywhere near that stature
or that experience, or that command. And Ben's not getting younger.
No, he's 35 now.
Yeah.
Time for the Tab Eras debate. The time for sport is now. Thanks to the Tab, imagine what you could be buying instead. Free and confidential support. Gamblinghelponline.org.au. The great grand final rivalries, Gus. Now, the thing I loved about Sunday, well, I loved all of it, but I had flashbacks to the 80s and the 90s with Canterbury and Manly. Great rivals in the 80s. They played the 95 grand final, which was supposed to be Terry Lamb's last game, But David Middleton reminded me he played on in 96.
He came back,
Yeah. Great Sydney rivalry. I suppose when you play a team in a grand final, you kind of have a perennial rivalry of some sort.
Lasts forever. I mean, when I grew up, it was a Sydney competition. The rivalries in Sydney were because of history, because of all the years we'd played against each other. So around the 80s, where I was playing and playing with teams that were successful, you know, your Canterburys, your Manlys and your Parramatters and your Dragons and those sort of sides were the pinnacle of teams. And then over time, some teams went by the wayside. We lost Western Suburbs and we lost Balmain and we lost Illawarra and, you know, we had mergers and all that sort of thing. And then, you know, Panthers and Canberra Raiders. Canberra Raiders came into the competition. By the end of the 80s, they were a superpower. You know, Penrith rose up in 90 and 91. Then came the Brisbane Broncos, and the Brisbane Broncos set a new standard. The Brisbane Broncos raised the level of this competition enormously because they were a one-town team. They had great advantage. They were the biggest team in the competition. They had the largest supporter base because all of Queensland have them. The Brisbane Broncos was born out of the success of Origin football in the 80s. And so Brisbane became great rivals. They played grand finals against the Dragons, and then Dragons and Canterbury renewed, and then Manly and Canterbury renewed, and then Manly and St George renewed. So the old traditional rivalries are with these Sydney teams here, but then all of a sudden a Melbourne Storm comes along.
Penrith
Comes along, you know, and everyone's sort of had a little bit of time now at the top over the last, as we've said, you know, like Roosters, Melbourne and Panthers over the last 3 years have dominated everything, or the last 4 or 5 years have dominated pretty much everything. It's hard to get a final series without those three teams or two of those three teams involved. But they've been great rivalries. I remember the Parramatta-Manly rivalries. I remember the Bulldogs-Manly rivalries. I remember the Bulldogs-Parramatta rivalries. I remember the Broncos-St George rivalries. The Penrith-Canberra Raiders was a favourite of mine because I was involved in that, and a lot of those players that were rivals became great mates and still are today over a period of time because of all that competition. The early 2000s, when I was at the Roosters, the Bulldogs-Roosters rivalry was massive. You know, there was great rivalries during that time.
Canterbury.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the 80s?
Yeah, absolutely. We shared a home ground.
Did you? Oh.
When they were building Parramatta Stadium. We used to share, they were building Parramatta Stadium for a couple of years because they burned it down in 81 when they won their first comp. So for a number of years, we shared Belmore Oval as Parramatta's home ground.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been testy.
Yeah, so we played at Belmore twice a year.
Oh, that would have been great.
And it was home and away in those days too, because it was, you know, it was all Sydney competition. You played everyone home and away.
Yeah. So you have to move your gear into the other shed.
Yeah, they took the home dressing rooms just to be pains in the neck, you know.
Yes, the Tab Eras debate, grand final time almost upon us. Of course, the time for sport is now, thanks to the Tab, and we're back for more Tab Eras next week.
Rugby league has had its fair share of iconic eras. But honestly, I can't get enough of the high-scoring, line-breaking, flick-passing, magic-rounding, origin drought-breaking, Vegas-flying, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more stats, insights and markets than ever, it's the best time in sport, and Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we're on. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
6-tackle trivia on the way to the preview. When's the last time a team outside the top 4 made the grand final? Gus, pretty easy one.
Cowboys?
Yep. 2017.
17, yeah.
The Michael Morgan year.
And they did it without Jonathan Thurston. Jonathan Thurston got hurt.
Yep.
And Michael Morgan stepped in. I think a fella called John Asiata might have played. He virtually played lock forward but played as a halfback in that period there. He's overplaying in England at the moment.
Was Tamari Martin in that side?
Yeah, Tamari Martin, yeah. 2017, yeah. We had Tamari at Penrith and he moved to Cowboys. Yeah.
There you are. Let's see whether Gus thinks one of these, or maybe a couple of these teams from outside the 4 could get through. Before that, the NRLW, Thursday night footy, Sharks-Tigers. Tigers got their first win of the year last week, and they head to PointsBet Stadium against the Sharks. I called the game that they played against Brisbane, and they're a good side, Cronulla. They're clinical, and Brisbane scored with about 5 seconds left to win. Yeah. So that's back-to-back losses, isn't it? They got flogged by the Roosters and beaten by Brisbane.
Yep.
You'll see that 7:30, live and free on 9. Saturday, Dragons Broncos, Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Then Cowboys, Knights. So Knights are in the 4, I think. They have to win.
Knights have to win.
Have to win.
Eels have to win.
Yep.
Sharks have to lose.
Okay.
And I think one of those, I think the Eels have got to make up a fair bit of for and against, even if they win and Sharks lose. But
so Roosters
Sharks play Thursday night. They need to beat the Tigers Thursday night. If they win, they're in the 4.
Yes. So they would go to 4. There's a 3-way tie at the top.
Yep.
So Roosters on 12, as is Brisbane and Cronulla. Cronulla could go back to first on Thursday night, but the others have games to come. The Roosters play Para in a big game for Para on Sunday at 3:15. So there's a fair bit at play for places in the 4 for the NRLW. Of course, you'll see all the games here on 9, live and free. Now, you know it's a big game when Paul Vaughton comes to Sydney, Gus.
Yes.
They're ambushing you. The whole Queensland team are calling the game on Friday. It's set up for the Cowboys. Cam Smith, Paul Vaughton with Salty. Gal's there. So there's a little bit of help for you. But JT's coming down. Well, I would imagine Lockie's going to be there, isn't it? They're all Queenslanders.
Anything for Queensland.
Anything for Queensland.
Anything for Queensland.
They've thrown the whole Queensland team down.
Anything for Queensland.
Not even Freddie. Not even Joey. I even get the night off. But it'll be fantastic to watch from the comfort of my home, which I'm not all that displeased about, although I'd love to be there. Okay, so Cronulla, North Queensland. What can I can tell you, Ramian's on the extended bench, so they're hoping to get him back, and same team for North Queensland. They've been fairly steady for the last little while. I was impressed with the Cowboys' grit last week. They're not renowned as a gritty side, but they were in an arm wrestle and they got themselves out of it.
It was a good game of footy, and the Knights, got to the front and they had to dig their way out of it, the Cowboys. I tipped the Cowboys to win, and I thought it would be a little easier than that, but the Knights were very, very good. There wasn't much between them at all, but in the end, the Cowboys finished the stronger. They've just got so much try-scoring potential in them. Look, I thought at the start of this final series that most likely the top 4 teams would go through to the preliminary final. They just changed partners, which happens a lot. The bottom 4 teams had walked such a tightrope to get to September football to qualify. They had to beat off a lot of contenders to get there, that it was a long, hard road for them. And I'm kind of thinking Sharks can bounce back and beat the Cowboys at home this week. Cowboys' last visit to Sydney, they flogged the Bulldogs. Bulldogs were under strength on that day, but it took a bit out of them because I thought they struggled a little bit the other night at home, and whether or not that game is going to take something out of them for this. The Sharks will be looking for a bounce-back factor. There's obviously got to be some confidence issues there. One of the things I've talked about, and it's been well documented, the Sharks haven't won a finals game since, 2018 or something.
Yeah.
They've been they've gone out in straight sets the last couple of years. And I said, well, is that going to be good experience or bad experience? People say, well, they've learned from their experience, they'll be better this year. But sometimes it's bad experience. Sometimes the bad experience of getting knocked out and embarrassed comes back to haunt you. And it certainly looked that way on the weekend. I mean, they got off to the most horrible start against the Melbourne Storm, found a way to fight their way back into it, and then scored that try on halftime to get to 14-10. And I thought, that's the one they needed. Now they turn with the wind at their back. All right, and it's only 4 points the difference. Here's a chance for them to put all them demons aside. Didn't
use the wind.
Well, they get beat 23-0 in the second half with the wind behind them.
Didn't give a yelp.
23-0, and the most telling thing for me was in our commentary, we interviewed the hooker, Harry Grant, coming off the field at half-time. Cronulla had just scored right on the bell to make it 14-10. Right, and Melbourne had the better of the play. They had the wind at their back. It was a strong wind too. And you could think some inexperienced players would be thinking, gee whiz, now we're in for a real arm wrestle or whatever like that. Harry looked like he was going off to recess at school to have his play lunch. He wasn't even sweating. And he said, yeah, we've had the better of that. We just, that's okay. We'll turn it around in the second half. We'll be right. And I'm thinking, you're running into the breeze and, you're not actually playing that great. You're a little bit clunky and, the Sharks are coming to get you and all that. Harry just said, no, she's sweet. We'll be right. It was like
Pass the fairy bread.
Honestly, it was like Saturday morning in the park. He come up with a treble and they won the second half 23-0 and never raised a sweat doing it. And Cronulla crumbled in front of them, like really succumbed to it and just contributed to their own demise. Now, can they put that aside in a week? Can they bounce back? And they're not just trying to get that out of their system. They're getting years of it now out of their system to come up with a win to win a finals match against the Cowboys.
I'm going to just say they'd win.
I'm going to back it in. I'm going to back them in to do it. I'm going to back Craig Fitzgibbon to get their mentality right. But Cowboys are an extremely dangerous commodity. They have an attacking game that can, if you are anywhere less than your best, they will find you out. They find you out from the dummy half position. They find you out from first receiver. They've got a fullback who never has a set of six off. He never has a play off. He never has a dead play. If he doesn't like the look of that, he'll spin around, turn around, run around a circle and run back the other way till he finds a look that he's looking for. He's just relentless in what he does. They've got great outside backs. They're powerful, they're strong, they're fast. They can score in possession. Kyle Felt scored with an intercept the other day. I mean, yes. They've got it. They're game breakers. Valentine Holmes is a game breaker. He'll chip and chase. He'll catch a bomb. He'll grope for a grubber kick. He just does things that make things happen. So they're very, very dangerous. Sharks, I can't explain that second half the other day. I really can't. I can't explain it. But they're going to have to explain it to themselves. And if they don't, they won't be winning this week. I'm just going to back them. There's just a gut feel. There's no real common sense to this at all. It's a gut feel that Sharks will win this week. Now, that's not any way to premise a tip. I just think...
Well, hey, it's worked for you so far. Our man's won every prize there is known to man with the tipping competitions around Sydney.
He might have been doing the opposite. I don't know.
All right, Sharkies. I just wanted to... I meant to mention this earlier. If not for Ponga the other night, Tom Dearden, he was nearly 10 out of 10. He's unbelievable. He's the most tenacious player in the comp.
Yeah.
How good? Like, he's phenomenal.
Yeah. And he's just coming into his prime now. He's only just starting his career.
But he's just an all-effort, everything.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, there's nothing flamboyant about him.
No.
He imposes himself on the game.
But his defence.
Yeah, I'm gonna back Sharks.
Okay.
And I'm gonna back Nicho. And I think that if they can just simplify their mentality and simplify their game and trust themselves, they've got a very potent attacking machine when they're in the right parts of the field. Their outside backs have got the ability to score tries, and they just need to trust that 2 or 3 tries is enough to win this game if we control the way the Cowboys get the ball and where they come from. Mind you, keeping the Cowboys to less than 16 or 20 points is no easy feat. They're going to have to be very, very good. The more I talk, the more I'm talking myself out of it.
You really are. I don't know if you believe your own tip, but let's see.
I sometimes I just have a premonition. I just have a premonition. I think the Sharks will get it right. I think they will.
Saturday night, same venue, Allianz Stadium, Roosters Manly. JWH is in. Radley's on the extended bench. Butcher to the bench. And so is Spencer Leniu. Right, so White and Butcher have swapped, but anyway, that's only cosmetic. And same 17 for Manly. But they got bashed up. They really got tackled relentlessly.
Too, they get a very short preparation compared to the Roosters.
Yes.
So physically and mentally, that means a lot at this stage of the year as well. With the Roosters, after the game against Panthers the other night, and Panthers were obviously very, very clinical and very brilliant and led 24-0 at halftime, and then Roosters came out and got a bit of ball, scored 2 tries, was 24-8. If they kick both those goals, it's 24-12. And then we have the one where the forward pass was brought back, forward or not. It was still a try-scoring opportunity that they were denied. Roosters could have dragged their way back to within a try there, as great as Penrith were.
Yeah.
And remembering, too, that Penrith scored 5 tries, 3 of those from kicks. Right? 3 of those from kicks. There was the little kick Luai for Garner. There was the kick that hit the upright that came back. And the second half, there was another kick into the in goal. So they scored 3 tries from kicks, which meant not all was wrong with the Rooster defence. And with all the possession that the Panthers had, it's not as though they stripped them bare and just kept running in tries. They didn't. Roosters. So I thought there were some positives. If the Roosters looked for them, there were some positives. They didn't play the right brand of football to beat the Panthers. But if they look for the positives, there's enough there to beat Manly. Manly have got class. They've got the class halfback, the class fullback. They've got a big forward pack, big, strong forward pack. Geez, they're big boys. Such size and such work ethic. And they've got a good bench. Manly are a professional team. And they got strike power. And Cooler and these fellas are so fast. But I think there was enough in the Roosters' performance to suggest that they can maintain their top four finish in final four and take it out against Manly. These two clubs played some finals years ago. I think it was a 4-0 final. I wouldn't be surprised if this is very similar. I wouldn't be surprised if both sides score 12 or less in this game. I don't know. I just got a feeling that...
Gee, you're getting some vibes.
It's going to be like that. I get vibes at this time of year. I might be completely wrong, but I'm just thinking both sides are going to have to knuckle down and play with grit to win it rather than flamboyance, and I just don't... And if the Roosters want any hope of challenging, the Melbournes and Panthers to win this comp, they've got to develop that mentality in that type of game. I think Rooster will win. I think they will get it right.
Well, on the vibe, what's going to be the score then? Low scorer.
Low scorer. I think it could be 2 tries to 1, something like that.
Okay.
I'm just. I might be completely wrong. It might be 6 tries to 5. I don't know. It depends how
the Roosters would like a 6 try to 5, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it depends how they are physically.
Yeah.
After the battering that they've taken, and they're all probably carrying injuries and all that sort of thing. And the Roosters, they lost playmakers at the back end of the year. There, we understood what happened that night. But I just think the makeup of these two teams, both should be going there with the attitude they're going to grind out a victory, and that could lead to a very hard-fought, low-scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I think Rooster will win. I just think the top 4 teams will change partners for the preliminary finals.
So you're predicting Penrith Shark, Storm Rooster?
Yeah, which is 2 weeks ago. It was Penrith Rooster and Storm Shark.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll just swap positions for the preliminary finals. I think the teams that were in the bottom half of the 8 did a great job to qualify. They beat a lot of good teams to get there, and their finals have been credible. But I just... I think Shark and Rooster will get the money this week.
All right. Now, good luck representing New South Wales on Friday night. You and your mate Gal.
What's on Friday night? Oh, the commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else is a Queenslander.
We're on the pre-match panel with all them Queenslanders.
Yeah. That'll go down well. If I could give you a bit of advice, leave really early. Why? Because the Swans have played next door.
Yeah, I'm going to get an Uber out. I'm not going to drive out and park.
Yeah.
I'll have to get an Uber out
there.
How
are you going to get an Uber back?
How am I going to get home?
I don't know.
That's the other part.
Yeah. Do we don't have access to the Channel 9 helicopter anymore?
No, I might have to walk down to Redfern and get a cab.
Redfern?
Yeah.
Big walk?
I used to do it.
Why don't you get a lift?
Maybe I'll have to walk back to Wallara, go back to the Wallara hotel or something.
I've found
That's up the hill, though.
Found a little sneaky street to park in because the car park's out at the moment. Yeah. So I've been finding little sneaky spots.
When I was young, I used to park on the no standing signs. Always found they were vacant.
They generally are.
Yeah.
Yes.
You end up with a lot of parking signs. So. Parking's become so difficult, hasn't it?
Oh.
And they're doing up the car park out there at Allianz now. So
that's right.
They've had to park us down the old, what do they call it now? The
entertainment quarter.
Quarter.
Shan't be going in the entertainment quarter.
No, you can't get out of there. It takes you
get out at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, 3 days to get out of there. That's ridiculous.
No.
I think last time I went there, I think I parked at Brighton and got an Uber in from Brighton and then got an Uber back to Brighton.
What? You are a man of the people. Why don't you get the light rail to Central and talk to all the punters about the game and then jump on the train?
Yeah, I could do that.
Don't think you will, though. You can get a cab from Central. The light rail's quite good there, I think.
Well, the last time I was there, I had to stay back and call the women's game after it, so most of the crowd had gone by the time we got out.
Yeah.
This time, you'll have Swans and...
Port Adelaide.
Yeah, Port Adelaide, and you've got the footy there. Oh, it's great for the eastern suburbs, but getting in and out might be a problem.
I'm glad I gave you the warning. See you, mate. Talk to you next week. That's 6 tackles for this week. Enjoy the footy across the weekend here on 9.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
This year, NRL on 9 is your one-stop shop for all footy.
That's right, Freddie. Not about the highlights. Action, 7 days a week.
Billy and Gus podcast, get that on your drive on the way home. Immortal Behaviour, grab a seat on the couch for that. And of course, my favourite, Freddie in the 8.
The best footy brains, the biggest games.
Don't trust the algorithm. Subscribe to NRL on 9 and get all your entertainment there.